Hello, welcome to James's pre-fight, post-fight MMA show, where we recap all the important things happening in the sport of MMA, and I, your host James, try to explain to you what's going on in the sport and make it as easy as 1, 2, 3 for you to understand. We hope you enjoy the show. Hey everybody, it's your host James from Fans Assemble. We're here to talk to you about Mackenzie Dern versus Xiaonan, UFC Fight Night taking place in Las Vegas in the UFC Apex. You may notice that I do not have my regular co-host with me for this show, Mike. Some good news and some bad news. Mike was a little busy to do this show, but the good news is right now, as we're speaking, he's currently working on producing 2 other shows for the Fans Assemble Network. And hopefully we could get to those 2 shows to you very soon. But right now, it's just a temporary thing. Hopefully he's going to be back in the next episode very soon. Besides, anyways, this MMA episode is going to be kind of brief. Pretty simple, pretty straightforward in my eyes. It's not the most stacked fight night. It's going to be good action, in my opinion. And we're here to give you good insight and who we believe is going to win. And what's important to note in these fights. So the first fight on the card is going to be Barcelos versus Jones. So in this fight, we kind of have similar momentums a little bit. We have the more experienced Barcelos, who's 16-3. He's 35 years old, so he's a bit older. 5'7" with a 67-inch reach. And we have Trevin Jones on the other side, 13'8", 32 years old, 5'7", with a 70-inch reach. So he is a little bit longer. And, he is quite a little bit less experienced than Barcelos. Both of them have similar streaks going on where they're coming off of 2 losses. And only 1 win in the last 3 fights. As you can see, we're going to put down for now on the last 3 fights. To give people like you who are very busy, we're supposed to do the research. We're trying to help you out to see what's coming up, to see the momentum going into this fight. And they're both kind of similar. I think it's pretty straightforward. Barcelos is the very clear favorite at minus 230 in some spots. He's going to be, in my opinion, the better striker. Even though he's on a 3-inch reach disadvantage, I do think that he's going to kick the legs of Jones. He's going to hit the body. Sometimes he comes in a little too aggressive, which could hurt him this fight against Trevin Jones. Because Jones, he does like to, if he needs to, he will wrestle if it gets too chaotic. But the main thing for me, the problem with picking Jones in this fight is, one, he's quite a bit less experienced than Barcelos. And even though he has the reach advantage, when you get him pushed back, which I do believe Barcelos is going to do very quickly in this fight, his defense isn't the best. You start to see him falter a little bit, and he will start to not use his reach and distance not that well. So it's a pretty straightforward pick in Hadi Barcelos to probably win by decision, or I believe a late TKO. So that's pretty straightforward, that one. So moving on to the co-main event, we have, let me just bring out my notes for a second. I'm very excited for this fight. We have Randy Rude Boy Brown versus Francisco Trinaldo, 170 pounds. Fight of 2. Another fight that there's a clear favorite. I believe that it's much closer than the last fight we talked about between Barcelos and Jones. We have Randy Brown. He's 15-4, 32 years old, 6'3", with a 78-inch reach, which is very notable. And then we have Francisco Trinaldo, who's very, very experienced, 28-8, 44 years old, so quite a bit older. He is 5'9", with a 70-inch reach. And Randy Brown's coming off of 3 wins. I believe his last loss was to Vicente Luque, which is not a bad loss considering the experience difference between those two. And then Francisco Trinaldo's coming off of 2 wins in his last 3. Tricky fight to pick. This is why I prefer to have Mike on this podcast, because he keeps me in check with my reality. I get into it. I get a little bit of the Joe Rogan in me. Oh, this guy's so good at that. That guy's so good at that. And, Mike does a great job of, just try to keep it clear cut. And I'm going to attempt to do the same right now. But Randy Brown is a minus 320 favorite. That is a huge favorite. He is the biggest favorite I believe we're going to talk about. Francisco Trinaldo is a plus 265 underdog. The clear-cut winner should be Randy Brown. He has a gigantic reach advantage over Trinaldo. He has very good kickboxing, very good jiu-jitsu, but he does like to fight very short. He likes that left overhand. Randy Brown fight very, very long, straight punches, front kicks to the face, front kicks to the body, good knees. Works the body very, very well in all of his fights. That's something to watch out for with the aging Francisco Trinaldo. Trinaldo, his takedown offense is okay. Like, we've seen fighters try to ground Randy Brown. Some of them have had success, varying success. That's usually the way to beat him. In my opinion, the way to beat him is you got to make the fight dirty. You got to make it look ugly. Go forward. Try to put him against the fence because, he's going to have to move back to use his range a little bit. And just try to make it ugly. But he has very good clinch. He himself has pretty good jiu-jitsu, pretty good wrestling. I know he trains at Serra Longo. He trains at Matt Serra's gym in Long Island. Plus you have the youth and the age. And Francisco Trinaldo, he was a guy who I thought was very, very underrated. And I thought he could make a splash in the top 15. It's just that he was so much older. I do think his lack of English hurt him a little bit with the UFC marketing, perhaps. But he was always very, very skilled. I do think out of all the underdogs, he is the most viable. He is a plus 265 underdog. Because Randy Brown, I always do question the durability a little bit. Also, the big thing for me is the leg kicks. Randy Brown stands very, very bladed. And he does like to use his jab a lot. He tends to go jabs to his left all the time. So it is something you could predict with him. However, with an 8-inch reach advantage, even if Trinaldo decides to kick his legs, right? Longest target, his kick to the short... longest weapon, his kicking leg to the shortest target, which would be Randy Brown's lead leg. And we've seen Trinaldo use his kicks very well to the body, to the head. So you could imagine he could do it to the legs, but even with that gigantic reach advantage, attacking that target, Randy Brown's reach advantage will still put Trinaldo in danger. And we've seen Trinaldo have trouble with guys who straight punch a lot. There's always the argument, but he beat Jai Herbert. Jai Herbert is not on the level, in my opinion, of Randy Brown. That's why I do think Trinaldo's the best underdog on these fights we're talking about. But Randy Brown is probably, he should be your favorite, and I do think he could win via finish, probably in the second round. But watch out, Trinaldo can make this a very interesting and competitive fight. So the main event, Mackenzie Dern versus Xiaonan. Interesting fight. We'll get into the tail of the tape first with Mackenzie Dern's 12-2, 29 years old, 5'4", for 63-inch reach. She's alternated wins and losses. She's had 2 wins out of her last 3, and then Xiaonan is 15-4, 33 years old. She's 5'5", with a 63-inch reach, and she's coming off with 2 losses. This fight, I thought for first glance, I thought it was more competitive than it was, but then when you really look into the stats, it starts to come into play where, like, Xiaonan, so the big deal with Mackenzie Dern is she is very tough. She's probably always going to move forward, and she's like basically the modern day Damian Maia. Her takedown game is okay. Sometimes she can pull out a good takedown when she needs to. Her takedown accuracy is okay. It's mainly because her striking is not good enough to set up her wrestling to get it to the mat. So she will do things like pull guard. She will find creative ways to get it to the mat or to make it about jiu-jitsu, which is interesting. She's definitely a specialist. And she's very, very confident in her chin, very confident with her punching power, which I do think is kind of like a little bit of an underrated part of her game. Like, Brian Ortega is always very big in moving forward, using his chin and his striking. His striking is obviously a lot better than Mackenzie Dern's, But then the opponent will feel pressured, and they would try to get a break, and they would try to take him down, and then he would submit them. Mackenzie Dern sort of does something similar, where she is pressuring with strikes. Not the best strikes. Sometimes they don't land. Most of the times they don't land. And then she'll create a clinch situation, and then that's when her grappling comes into play. But do I think she's going to need that in this fight? I don't think so. Yang Xiaonan is not really a power puncher. Most of her UFC career, she's been mostly volume. She has been taken down quite a bit, actually. She only has a 60% takedown defense. Granted, the girl she fought... excuse me, I have the wrong stats in front of me. I was just reading off the stats from last time. The last main event. Excuse me. Yang Xiaonan, checking out UFC stats right now. Yang Xiaonan has a takedown defense of 65%. And, Mackenzie Dern, her takedown offense, her takedown accuracy is very, very low for somebody whose game surrounds us. 35%. Usually when you get, good MMA wrestlers like Aljamain Sterling, TJ Dillashaw, Kamaru Usman, Kobe Covington, their stats will usually be around 40%. But that's because they're striking. Sometimes they don't really want to get the takedown. It's the striking feeds into the wrestling, or the wrestling feeds into the striking, which we'll probably get into more when the UFC 280 pay-per-view comes around. But Mackenzie Dern doesn't really have that part of her game. That's not the purpose her game serves. That's why a lot of people kind of roll their eyes a little bit when she can't get the grappling start in the first round. But it's a tough fight to pick because Xiaonan, she's very good cardio, excellent cardio in my opinion. She has very good striking, very good volume. Not particularly in the power. She's very good volume. She's fought in the Apex before, so we've seen her do it. She's lost to Kalia Gadelha. She got taken down, but she kept the volume up. I don't think she can afford to do that against Mackenzie Dern. Because Mackenzie Dern, as soon as it hits the match, she's going to get something. And, you can always get out, and we've seen people do it plenty of times, but you don't want to take that chance. And then Carla Esparza ground and pounded her. But Esparza has much better wrestling than Mackenzie Dern. So to go with the pick, it's tough to say. I think the winner is going to be Yang Xiaonan. I kept going back and forth. I'm picking Yang Xiaonan to win via decision. 5 rounds. I think she'll probably keep Mackenzie Dern away for a big majority of the fight. I think Mackenzie Dern, the volume is going to confuse. I think it's going to be a tough time for her to get around it. Even though they have the same reach advantage, Yang Xiaonan does fight a little bit longer. For me, it just has. If Mackenzie Dern gets her down, it's gonna have to be just pure her takedown ability, or her ability to create the grappling is just so much better than Yang Xiaonan's ability to stop it, which I don't think so. That's why I'm picking Xiaonan via decision. I think she's just going to keep her away for 5 rounds. She's going to rack up volume. You're going to see a ton of Yang Xiaonan just landing strikes, landing combinations. And Mackenzie Dern, trying to swing, trying to get her to stand in front of her and having a very hard time. The thing I do think that will help Mackenzie Dern the most, it is 5 rounds. I have yet to see Yang Xiaonan do this for 5 rounds. So it'll be very intriguing to see. But that is the bet. Yang Xiaonan via decision. Thank you for listening to the podcast. If you like what you were listening to, please subscribe to Fans Assemble. And if you can, please give us a rating. Do it for the audio world. They need you.